Have you wanted to start your podcast, but you feel like so many people are already in the niche that you want to be in? Well, this episode is going to make you look at that in a very different way. I'm interviewing my client, Brandee Hommerding, the host of the Healthy Buzz podcast, all about how she stands out in the wellness space. Now, as you can imagine, and as you probably know, there are a lot of wellness podcasts out there, but the way that people talk about a certain topic in their niche is obviously different from person to person. And this is why it is so important to not only niche down, but also know who your audience is, what you believe in, and what you want your audience to take away week after week. I have a reflection for you before you listen to this episode. And it is, when you sit down to record your next podcast episode, or if you haven't started your podcast yet and you want to plan out your podcast, you want to map out your first 10 episodes or so, before you do that, you should think about what the listener is going to take away from what you're talking about. If it's entertainment, great. If it's knowledge on something, like Brandee teaches a lot of wellness tips in her podcast and has a lot of wellness experts on her podcast, great. The last thing I want you to do is just sit down to record just to record with no plan. I want you to know exactly what the goal of the episode is and what your listener is getting out of it. So reflect on that before you hit the record button. Sure, things can come up in the moment. As you're recording, you might get some extra inspiration, but I think we need to do more when we're thinking about the listener experience. Brandee does a great job at that, and I want you to do a great job at that too. Without the listeners, our podcasts are really nothing, right? It's like when celebrities are like, oh, thank you to my fans, I'd be nowhere without you. Okay, we might not have the same reach as the celebrities, but the message is the same. Think about what the listener is going to get by listening specifically to you. Okay, now we'll get into this episode with Brandee Hommerding. Welcome to the Podcast Café, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Brandee, welcome into the Podcast Cafe.
Thank you so much for having me, Haley.
Of course. I always love interviewing my clients because I listen to all of your episodes and know so much about you and the podcast that it's fun for me to kind of like structure these questions in a way where I'm even curious about some of the ways that you are doing your podcast. So I'm excited to get into it.
I can't be more thrilled to be here because it's fun to be on the other side sometimes, and I haven't done that in a long time. I've been doing so much of the interviewing, so being on the other side of it is really fun too.
Totally. So my first question that I have to ask you, I ask all of my guests this, is what is your go-to coffee order since we are in the Podcast Cafe?
Well, it's kind of boring. I just get a plain old latte.
Okay.
Just latte.
What kind of milk?
Whole milk.
Whole milk. Do you have a favorite coffee shop here in Seattle?
Oh, I mean, I like Lula's if I want like really upbeat music.
Yeah.
That's kind of motivating me. The different rooms are so fun.
So cute.
To sit in as well. But then something close to my house is Real Fine Coffee.
Okay, nice. Cool. Okay, well, podcasting, let's get into it. So you started your podcast and have almost 50 episodes now, which is incredible. I learned so much from your show, but tell me a little bit about the background of why you started it, because I know before I helped you launch it, you had been thinking about it for quite some time.
Yeah. So with the podcast, it's always been something. It's so funny because like my friend would joke with me about it, and they'd like, let's pick your intro music. And I'm like, I don't know if this is really going to happen, you guys. But I really wanted to create a space where I could have like these longer form content available. And writing a blog post just takes a lot of energy. And like, I do a lot of researching to make sure that I have my credible sources on there. So I wanted to have a longer form content available. And then also with social media, there's the reels you create can only be so long, but you only capture somebody's attention for so long. Yeah. So I was just like a different way of being able to communicate and have these deeper conversations and to like just share more about health and wellness, because I feel like the health and wellness space is so nuanced too, that we need to have multiple different perspectives of different health and wellness topics. So being able to have that space where people can learn and binge the content and like take from it what they need is what I kind of wanted to create.
Totally. And I think what's so interesting, what I've found more about working with you and researching the wellness industry podcasts is it's crazy, like the competition in that field, but it's so different. It's such a big industry and there's so many podcasts about wellness, but you're very anti-diet culture, and there's a lot of podcasts that promote that. There's a lot of podcasts that promote a lot of things that you don't believe in. So although it is this big industry, it is broken down into different pieces, and I think it's really cool to see like your audience is loving what you're creating, and it's such different content than some of the more mainstream shows out there. So
I wanted to create that space that we could have some different conversations. Some of that a little bit more of the like unconventional approach, the unfiltered conversations. Sometimes I feel like there's a lot of health and wellness podcasts out there that are like really polished and they're really scientific-y, or they're all like the gym bros, or they're all like, you need to follow this regimen to a T. And I'm like, ooh, but everybody is so different that I wanted to create a space where we could have a lot of these different conversations on a lot of different topics. And like one topic that comes up to mind that I've had different people on to talk about is cycle syncing. And there's two very different camps when it comes to cycle syncing. And I've had both perspectives on my show so that people can take what they need when they listen to that. Like, is this something that they want to apply to their situation, or is it something they're like, no, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to add something extra to my plate? So I like to provide a space for nuance.
Yeah, exactly. And just like you're a client of mine, like I'm a client of yours, and I love hearing, like, obviously on the calls that we have or just knowing each other, we're not going to get into everything that you know. Sometimes it's not like relevant to whatever I'm going through, but sometimes it really is, right? And so I love listening to those episodes to hear your perspective on things. And honestly, I do go back sometimes and listen to past episodes just to see, like, remind myself of what you said, especially when it is something that's like relevant to the situation that I'm in. So I feel like even though you were creating this it's a great resource for your current clients too, as well as people who are just getting connected with you.
Yeah, like with my client sessions, the sessions range from like 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on where my client is in their package. And we have to cover a lot of ground in those sessions. And so like sometimes I'm like feeding my clients from the fire hose, and it's like, okay, here comes a lot of information. And like, I don't expect you to write it all down, and I don't expect you to be able to retain all that information in your head. But what I can do is send you a podcast episode that's relevant to it, to be like, you know what, we're going to real quick highlight the high points of whatever we're talking about, and I'm going to send you this 15-minute, 20-minute, maybe even 45-minute podcast episode that's going to dive deeper into this topic, so that if it's something that you're really wanting to learn more about, you have the ability to listen to that episode and to take in as much information as you need.
Yeah, exactly.
So really, I'm leveraging my time by doing it.
You are. It is really a time saver, and I know that I appreciate it, and I'm sure your other clients do too. What is so interesting about your show too is how much research goes into it. And tell us a little bit about that part of your podcast.
Yeah, well, more so for my like solo episodes, I am doing research to make sure that like that the person that's listening is seeing where I'm pulling this information from. Part of that, somebody would say, was maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, probably, but I want to make sure that people aren't like, oh, she's just another like grifter on the podcast, like just telling us whatever she believes for herself. So I do some research on my solo episodes so that people know, hey, this is where this information is coming from. Like my episode about like creatine, or the episode on fiber maxing and why that trend is maybe not so good for everybody to be doing. So I like to provide a little bit more background and resources for that. Then for the guests that I have on, like I am doing a little background check on them, who they are, checking out their Instagram, their website before I bring them on the show. Because I want to make sure, one, that their values are in alignment with my audience. Like I have a pretty good idea who my audience is. So I want to make sure that we're also not bringing a lot of that diet culture into the episodes, because that's not what I'm all about. And so I want it to still represent my brand, but I want to make sure that these people that are coming in are educated and qualified for what they're going to be speaking on.
Yeah, because that's a huge piece too, because as much as your listeners are coming for your expertise, if you have a guest on that has no idea what they're talking about, that almost like affects your credibility in a way too. And I think that is something that a lot of people don't think about, especially in a wellness space, that it's like impact, like someone could make it change their life based off of what you're telling them, right? So that guest research is really important. You mentioned knowing who your audience is. I know that this is one of the most important parts of podcasting. Tell us a little bit more about who that is and how you discovered that.
Yeah, well, some of that came from, like even my analytics on Instagram. Like I know that I'm mainly females that are age 25 to 50, which is kind of broad, but even more so the millennials are my ideal client, and the people that are attracted to the type of content that I'm creating on Instagram. And so now creating that similar type of content in my podcast, I'm seeing that show up also in my analytics on my podcast as well. So it's good to have that, to know like, when I'm having different guests on, like who is this ideal listener going to be, and what is this guest going to bring that is going to be relevant? Because I'm sure it's like you, like I get an email every day from somebody who's like, hey, I want to be on your podcast. And I'm like, yeah. One, please provide a resource as to who you are.
Yes.
With just your name being like, hey, can I be on your podcast? No, I need to know your like Instagram handle. I need to know your website. I want to know a little bit more about your credentials, not just what you want to come and talk to me about. Like,
totally.
Those immediately I mark them as spam, and don't bother me.
No, that's a good approach. I know I get so many each day. I just got one of this guy who's like, I was child 19 of 21 and I want to come talk about whatever. And I was like, what? So there's a lot.
Do you know what my podcast is about? Are you
what?
Sure that you're even going to talk to my audience?
Exactly. So there are so many guests that we can have out there, and I know that like for your podcast, like you do have some dream guests on, or you do have dream guests that you want to get on the show. Who are they? Do you want to drop a few names?
Well, one of them is going to be on my show later.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Nicole Jardum was my mentor for a hormone course that I did, and she has written a book called Fix Your Period. She had a podcast called The Period Party, and she's been like, her Instagram is just wonderful. I was actually a guest on her podcast. I think that was like one of the first podcasts I ever did as a guest, because in her program that she had, the certification course that I took, she always hosted two of the graduates from the program on her podcast, but we had to pitch ourselves. And so I pitched her on how diet culture was wrecking women's hormones. And so it was such an honor to be a guest on her podcast and have that be one of my really bigger first episodes. And now, I was like, I really want her to be on my podcast. I had talked to you about this, and you're like, just do it. Just send her an email and just ask her. And so I did. And we're going to be recording next week, I think.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Congrats.
Thank
See,
you.
all it takes is a email, and being like, hey, I think people love talking about themselves and they love being invited. And as long as it's like a very curated, honest invite, not like the ones that you and I get in our in our
Yeah,
emails,
right.
right? There's like an art to approaching those dream guests of yours. So is there anyone else you want to point out?
Oh, yeah. Dr. Carrie Jones, if you're listening, I would love to have you come on. She has a podcast called Hello Hormones. She is like the best when it comes to explaining hormones, especially for perimenopausal women. Excellent content. And she lives in Portland, so I feel like she should just be on my podcast because we're basically neighbors.
Basically, yes, 100%. 100%. Okay, well, if anyone knows her, let her know. But, that was another question I was going to ask you because before you started your own podcast, you already had success with podcast guesting. What did that influence when you approached your own podcast?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. So, like, it sparked my interest to be like, hey, I could reach a bigger audience. I could educate a little bit more by, like having my own podcast. But then I think too, what I really took away is like some of the podcasts that I like to listen to, like listening to how the podcast hosts like interviews their guests. Like, I'm like, oh, I really like the way that they interview the guests and like the listening and kind of repeating back sometimes. So especially if it's something more complex that their guests had explained. Like, I was like, oh, okay, like this could be really fun to be able to interview people, hear about the things that they're really passionate about so that they have this like great platform to also spread their message as well.
Totally. Did that play a role in you picking the length of the podcast? Because I know there's like, that's a question I get all the time is how long should my podcast be? And I think with a podcast like yours, it's not going to be able to be 15 minutes, right? Like you're getting deep into these questions. So did that influence that at all?
I find that with my podcast, I'm not necessarily pushing for a certain time frame when I have the guests on, but what I find is that the flow of the conversation ends up being anywhere between 40 to 60 minutes. And it's just kind of this natural flow. So yeah, like I have my guests submit what questions they want to talk about to me. And then I kind of refine those questions into like how I'm going to ask them throughout our show. But I'm taking notes throughout our show as well. So then I'm like, oh, wait, I want to talk about that. So let's circle back. So there's this flow of this conversation that is happening between us. And I find that it just kind of runs its course on that topic about 40 to 60 minutes later.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. And I mean, for you, you have credentials, you have experience, you have a successful business of working with clients, and you're also in school right now. I was actually wondering this the other day. I wanted to know what the most surprising, maybe one thing or few things you've learned from your podcast guests have been.
Oh boy. I mean, I've learned so much from all of them. Like that's the thing that I really love learning, as you can tell, in school, multiple certifications. So by having all of these guests on, I'm like expanding my knowledge so much. Every single person that comes on, like I'm learning something from them, which then I feel like makes me a better practitioner and better resource for my clients as well, because I'm like gaining all this extra knowledge and like resources to send them and be like, hey, like, for example, around like sleep apnea, something that a lot of women are dealing with but don't know that they're dealing with. And so as I'm having conversations with my clients around different symptoms that they're experiencing, I'm able to be like, hey, I think this is something that we need to look into. And so we're going to go down this little rabbit hole maybe and explore what's going on. And it's because I've like learned all this stuff from these different podcast guests I've had on.
Was there like something that they taught you specifically that you were just like blew your mind? Because for me on your podcast, when that guest a few weeks ago was talking about how your stomach issues can affect your eyes, and I was having stomach issues, as you know, and I was also having the craziest dry eye, red eye, whatever. I was like, what is going on? And so that like blew my mind when I heard that on your show. Did you have a moment like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, recently with the ADHD coach I had on. So as somebody who is 44, turning 45 in 6 months here. And having these hormonal shifts that I'm dealing with. And something that can come to light for a lot of women in perimenopause is like ADHD. And a few months ago, even my therapist was like, ADHD? And so when I had this ADHD coach on, like so much of what she was saying, I'm like, oh, I resonate with that. I resonate with that. I resonate with that. I think I might have a little bit of ADHD going on here.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like validating to hear other people's stories, right? No, I think
for sure.
that's so important because I mean, even you talk about this a lot of like your practitioner, your doctor is gaslighting you. I feel like in podcasting, if you're looking for, more like approaches like you take, it's not that gaslighting approach. It's like, oh, maybe I do feel like this. Maybe there's a reason I feel like this. So that's what you're doing for your listeners too.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I want to validate that female experience. Well, even the male experience. I don't have very many male listeners, but if they listen, like, they could be like, oh, yeah, I resonate with that too. Because not every topic is necessarily specific to women, especially like the ADHD one that's coming out very soon. So there's different topics, but most of them are focused on women-specific health and wellness things. And I feel like in the health and wellness space, so many women have been gaslit that I just want them to feel seen. I want them to feel validated. I want them to be like, oh my gosh, I can relate to that. And even talking about, I've had 2 clients who I've shared a thyroid episode with when I interviewed a nurse practitioner about thyroid health. And I shared it with 2 clients. And both of those clients are like, that episode like made me cry. Because they resonated with it so much. And they're like, I felt seen, I felt heard for like the first time with my thyroid journey.
Wow. That's so interesting, right? Were you expecting that when you first started your podcast?
No, not at all. Like I knew that, like I wanted people to be like, oh yeah, I know like the podcast and like she's fun and they have really cool conversations. But I didn't really expect people to have like that emotional kind of response to it.
Yeah. That's so cool. What keeps you going with the show week after week? I mean, like I said, has it been a year yet? I don't think it's been quite a year, but almost.
Almost, yeah. It is sometimes challenging to be like, oh, like if I don't have a guest, I got to create some content real quick. Or if I am like falling behind, all my guests are kind of bunched up and I'm doing a lot of interviews in a couple of days, that can feel a little overwhelming. But at the end of the day, I love connecting with people. I love hearing their story. I love like hearing how what they're doing has impacted their own journey, because so many of the people that I interview, they've had their own experience with what they now are like helping other people with. And so it's just very like, encouraging to hear somebody else's success story when it came to their own like health and wellness journey.
Totally. And I think just going back to like the resource for your clients too, it's so cool that if something comes up on a call with them that you don't have the time to dive into, like you have that podcast, or if they would need to share it with their friends, you have it. Like it is truly such a resource. So I think that's awesome. What's coming up for you soon other than this cool guest?
Well, I will be putting out a summer hormone series. Still working out all the details on that, but I'm really excited for that. Like just the focus, like kind of a 4 to 6 weeks-ish series on like women's hormones, kind of, I don't know if resetting your hormones is kind of the right word, but like maybe helping women understand their hormones a little bit more with having some more nuanced conversations. This is when Nicole's episode will be part of that series.
Oh, perfect.
Because we're going to be talking all about birth control. So, and it's a conversation that I have with a lot of my clients. And so having a little bit more of a deeper resource for people to tune into, to understand, so that they can make informed choices when it comes to their hormone health and their conception.
Okay, I'm excited to listen to that. I mean, obviously I'll be listening, but I can't wait. I feel like that's such a current important topic that it'll be fun to dive into like a summer series like that. But okay, we talked about your podcast. I want to talk a little bit more about what you do in your business. So give us like the lowdown on that.
Yeah, so I do nutrition coaching that also uses functional lab testing. So with my program, I'm helping women understand what is the root cause of their symptoms. So a lot of the women that I work with, they are in this like gray area. They don't feel super fucking awesome in their body, and they aren't sick enough to get the attention of their medical providers. And so they're in this gray area where they keep being told everything's fine, everything's normal, just eat less, move more, lose weight, all this kind of bullshit that really is not helpful for them. And so I am coming in and being like, actually, there's a lot that we can uncover here when we understand your body a little bit more. Let's do some functional lab testing and see what is actually driving the symptoms you're experiencing. So like stool testing or urine testing to look at hormones. Like there's a whole bunch of different tests that we can use. And then through that, when we get some answers, then I'm correlating the person sitting in front of me, the symptoms that they're experiencing with the data that I'm receiving from their tests, and creating kind of this like, how are we going to rebalance your body kind of situation, and then walking them through not only here's what we're going to do to correct these imbalances and get rid of these symptoms, but how can we also create this really healthy relationship with food, one that is sustainable, that allows flexibility without the influence of diet culture.
Yeah, yeah. How, like, who works with you specifically? I mean, you talked about women, you talked about, like, not sick enough, but are there certain problems that typically they're coming to you with?
Yeah, so I'm working a lot with PCOS women, so women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I'm also working a lot with perimenopausal women. So the hormone shifts that are happening midlife, like what is going on with their body. They feel probably really disconnected, feel like a stranger in their body, having to learn how the things that we did in our 20s are no longer going to work in your 40s, ladies. I hate to break it to you, but we can't have the same approach. So we got to approach things a little bit differently. And then also the people who are dealing with a lot of gut issues. So the indigestion, the bloating, constipation, all of that gut stuff, like those are my favorite conversations to have with clients, and to like figure out what's actually happening in their gut, because the way your gut feels is how you're going to feel as a person and how you're going to feel when you show up. And it can be pretty devastating for people who are dealing with some pretty chronic GI symptoms.
I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's get into it. What are you usually doing when you're listening to your podcasts? Going on walks, working? Like, what are you normally doing?
Oh, a little bit of A, a little bit of B, a little bit of C. I am like getting ready in the morning. I am walking my dogs. I am driving. If I'm like listening to if my husband and I are going on like a long road trip, we like to listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. So that will help pass the time. And we both get really interested into what's going on and who did it and type situation.
Very cool. Okay. And with that, what podcast do you recommend people listen to? Like, what are your favorites?
I definitely love anything hormone, health, and wellness. I have quite a few that are like my favorite that I listen to each week. Also true crime. Love some true crime. And that was where we started with podcast listening. My husband and I was true crime. So I listen to it. Like, it makes life so interesting, and you can be like, wow, there are people out there that are really like that.
Yes.
That's not what I want a podcast about me for, right?
No,
I don't want to be in the true crime category.
Absolutely not.
But yeah.
That's so funny. What's your favorite true crime podcast?
Oh gosh, definitely the go-to is My Favorite Murder. Mm-hmm. Like, that'll be, if we're not listening to some series that we find, like My Favorite Murder for sure.
Okay, I love it. Any hormone podcast you want to point the name out of?
Yep. I love Dr. Carrie Jones' Hello Hormones. I also love Dr. Jolene Brighton. Hers is the Jolene Brighton Show.
Cool. Okay, awesome. As a podcast listener, do you have any pet peeves?
Oh, when there's like such a change in the volume between either the hosts and the guests, or even the commercial, if the commercial and goes blaring loud, like I hate that. That was a big pet peeve.
Me too. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, like, where'd that come from?
Right?
Very scary, very scary. Okay, if you weren't podcasting about wellness, what would you be podcasting about?
That is a great question. I would be podcasting about traveling and like going to different places, because we've been a lot of places, experiencing different cultures. I would love to be like a travel blogger someday, like in my next life.
Yeah.
Write all these different wonderful blogs about the places that we're going and the itinerary that we mapped out. Like,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, what's your favorite place you've been to?
I mean, I hate this question because I like something about every place that I've been to. So it's really hard to be like, this was my favorite, because literally every place that we've gone, I'm like, oh, I really like this aspect of this trip and this aspect of this trip. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say Thailand, because that was like my first really big international trip.
Okay.
And that
very
was,
cool.
it was like the amazing race to get there, because we missed a flight and then we had to run and then we had to barter to get on our next flight.
Oh my
and like
gosh.
it was chaos. But
The whole
we made it.
experience. The whole experience. You should do an episode about like travel and keeping your gut in check, because that's always my problem. My tummy always hurts when I travel. That's my podcast request.
Will do.
Okay, I have two
All right,
last
all
questions
right.
for you.
Okay.
What is one thing you wish more people knew about podcasting?
That they can hire people like you to take a load off, because it's a lot to do all the editing and to do the video clips and to do the commercials and the intro and the outro. But if you have a Haley in your life, you get to just outsource all that. And it takes, like, that was the biggest thing. I was like, don't know how I'm going to have time to start a podcast, because I don't have the time to do that. And I don't know how to do it. And so then I have to learn how to do it. And that learning curve seems steep. And so that's part of the reason why I kept like saying not starting a podcast, because I didn't know how to. So then I met Haley and I was like, I got a present for you. It's called my podcast.
I love it. I love it. No, we met each other at that West Seattle networking event. And when we stood up, like, I was going to come talk to you because I was like, I need to learn more about her. And you were going to come talk about me. So it was just like perfect time, perfect place.
Yep.
Everything worked out. But no, I love working on your show. So
the stars aligned and it was
They
time.
did.
And I was like, well, if there was ever a sign, this
right
is a
now.
sign. I will say it did take me a while, even after meeting you, to actually start. And you kind of had to give me a little kick in the pants to be like, just record something and get it to me by this date. So I was like, okay.
but look at you now.
I know.
Almost 50 episodes. Like almost
I
a
know.
year in. And I don't think you're going to stop anytime soon. So it's awesome.
Nope.
I love it. You're doing
Nope.
great. Okay, my very last question for you is, what is the most surprising thing that podcasting has taught you about yourself?
Well, first thing was that I have a hard time reading every word on the screen when I'm reading somebody's bio. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to like start over. Haley doesn't get all the bloopers. I have to restart multiple times. So I'm like learning that my brain doesn't like to read everything. So then I'm like, is that ADHD too? I would say that. But then also like being able to just show up authentically as me and like, this is it. This is who you get in real life and on the podcast. Like, it's not a different person. It's the same person. So I think that was helpful, that I didn't need to show up differently.
Brandee, where can people connect with you? I'm going to put links to the Healthy Buzz, of course, in the show notes, but where else can people learn about what you do, your resources, and of course, working with you?
Yeah, so my business is Bee Collective Wellness, and that's bee like a bumblebee. And so my Instagram handle is the same. I'm mainly on Instagram.
Cool.
I don't have time to bother with the others. But you can, my website is also the same. And of course, my podcast, The Healthy Buzz.
Okay, cool. And you have a really cool 7-day protein guide that's super helpful too. So I'll drop the link in the show notes to that as well.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you so much for joining me. I've loved this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Café. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind the scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Café.